the early part of, in the early part of this century, things began to ease. There was some opportunity for Kurds to use their own language. They weren't killed for it. Slight openings here and there. I was back in Diyarbakir again a couple of years later. It was much better than it had been before. There was also other openings. In Turkey, there was the beginning of an opening towards recognizing the huge massacres of Armenians, which previously had been unmentionable. There was some reconstruction of Armenian sectors and so on. That changed. I was there as a Hrant Dink lecturer a couple of years ago and was very impressed with huge, enormous demonstrations open right in front of the building where he was killed, and things were improving. Then the last couple of years it started regressing again. Erdoğan is becoming more authoritarian. His drive to accumulate power has become a kind of an obsession. It's combined with increasing attacks against the Kurdish population, what you described, I need not review. It's related to what's going on in the neighboring countries. Some of the worst atrocities in terrorist atrocities in Turkey. In fact, the one that inspired his diatribe against the signers of this a petition were actually ISIS atrocities. Erdoğan has been supporting ISIS. The border has been essentially open to jihadis flowing into Syria. Turkey was accepting oil shipments from ISIS. They were compelled to formally block them, but they still come in by smuggling routes. Meanwhile, the main ground forces opposing ISIS are Kurds. They're the ones who've carved out a region in Syria, which is the one place that's kind of functioning and, in fact, in very interesting and important ways. But they are also the ground forces, and of course, Turkey is attacking them. In fact, right now, the Geneva negotiations are supposed to take place, but Turkey's insisting that the Kurds not participate. The most important force attacking ISIS can't participate. They're very closely connected to the Kurdish groups, PKK in Iraq. They're basically offshoots of the same group, and those are, the terrorists. And meanwhile, he's not only giving tacit support to ISIS, but open support to the al-Nusra Front, which is barely different from ISIS. It's a turf battle, but they're pretty much interchangeable. So much so that the West doesn't want either of them to participate in the negotiations, but they're Turkish allies. And so in this complex of circumstances, you have Erdoğan trying to amass more and more power to himself based by the traditional technique of inspiring nationalist hysteria and fear of terror, which in part he's instigating. ISIS bombings are related to Turkish actions. I don't want to say that nothing else is involved, but this is a major factor in it. And the concern that this might even just unravel all the achievements of this last 15 years, which were not trivial, and go back to the hideous circumstances of the 1990s, it's, I think, very serious. And the other aspect of this is something which, in my experience, is unique in Turkey, and that is the fact that it's the only country where I know where the leading prominent writers, artists, journalists, publishers, academics are openly, constantly, not only protesting crimes of the government, which is rare enough, but are actually involved in direct civil disobedience against them, facing, sometimes enduring, pretty serious punishment. There's nothing like that anywhere in the world that I know, practically nothing in history like it. It's a unique phenomenon of which Turkey ought to be very proud. The signers of that petition are examples of it. that's maintaining Turkish honor, should be deeply respected. If there ever is any history, maybe there won't be, that'll be recognized as a remarkable contribution. And I think that's the situation we're now seeing develop. Unfortunately, the world is keeping quiet about it, but that was true in the 90s as well. It wasn't just the United States was supporting Turkish atrocities. Germany was supporting them. Others were. I remember some really ironic situations, like in 1999, there was an anniversary of NATO, big meeting of commemorating the anniversary of the founding of NATO, and they were all lamenting the fact that right near NATO's borders, there are terrible crimes being committed in the former Yugoslavia. Meanwhile, within NATO, there were much worse crimes being committed with the help of the NATO powers, the crucial help, and that wasn't even discussed. This kind of circumstance, even barely even being reported, that's what we face in what's called Western civilization. Doesn't merit that term, and this is a good example of it. But the silence today, passivity over the mounting atrocities against the Kurds, once again, not only in Turkey but in Syria as well, is a kind of a devastating phenomenon that's a blight on Western culture and society.